Millstone was the kind of town where nothing ever seemed to change. Days moved slowly, neighbors knew one another by name, and the loudest sound at night was the rustling of leaves. It was a place where people felt safe enough to leave their doors unlocked and trust that tomorrow would look just like today. That fragile sense of comfort was shattered one chilly autumn morning. When Clara Jennings did not show up for work, her colleagues assumed she had overslept. By midday, her best friend went to check on her and stumbled upon a scene that no one in Millstone would ever forget. Clara's lifeless body was discovered inside her small brick house on Maple Street. The scene raised more questions than answers. There were no signs of forced entry, no smashed windows, no broken locks. Everything looked strangely undisturbed, as if whoever had been there belonged in the house. The only odd detail was a single wine glass shattered near the kitchen counter, its red stain seeping into the floor like a silent warning. Clara's phone was still on the table, her purse untouched, and nothing of value appeared missing. As word spread, shock rippled across the town. People who once greeted each other with friendly smiles now whispered behind closed doors. Who could have done this, and why? Some believed it had to be a stranger passing through, while others suspected something more sinister, that the killer was someone who knew Clara, someone who blended easily into their quiet community. Parents pulled their children off the streets, shopkeepers closed early, and the streets of Millstone suddenly felt heavier, darker. The murder wasn't just the loss of one young woman. It was the death of innocence for the entire town, and the beginning of a mystery that would haunt every corner of their lives. The investigation quickly turned its focus on Clara's fiancé, Daniel Ross. He was the last known person to see her alive, and their relationship had recently been strained. Neighbors recalled overhearing raised voices the night before Clara's death, and that detail painted Daniel in a dangerous light. Police questioned him repeatedly, and his nervous behavior only fueled suspicion. The broken wine glass became a crucial piece of evidence. His DNA was found on the rim, making it appear as though he had been drinking with Clara just before the crime. Combined with his fingerprints scattered throughout the home, it seemed to tell a clear and damning story. The media wasted no time in portraying Daniel as a jealous partner whose temper had finally boiled over. Headlines labeled him the fiancé with secrets, and television anchors speculated endlessly about hidden arguments, financial struggles, and the possibility of a double life. For the people of Millstone, it was easier to believe the killer was someone close to Clara than to imagine a stranger slipping unnoticed into their safe town. The narrative was simple and convenient, and most of the community accepted it without question. Yet, beneath the surface, cracks began to appear in the case against Daniel. He had no history of violence, no record of threats, and his friends described him as calm, almost passive. His alibi placed him at a late-night gas station miles away, though the exact timeline was messy and left room for doubt. Detectives noted their unease but pressed forward, pressured by public demand for justice. Daniel himself appeared broken, confused, and desperate to clear his name, but every piece of evidence seemed to circle back to him. To many, the case felt solved, but to a few careful eyes, something about the story didn't quite add up. As weeks passed, the case against Daniel began to weaken. Detectives revisited the evidence, hoping to strengthen their argument, but instead they stumbled upon something overlooked. While cataloguing items from Clara's bedroom, an officer opened a drawer and found a worn leather diary. Its pages were filled with neat handwriting, recording Clara's daily life, her hopes, and her fears. At first, it seemed like nothing more than a personal journal, but as investigators read further, an unsettling picture emerged. Clara had been living with a quiet dread. She wrote about seeing a shadow outside her window at night, footsteps trailing her down empty streets, and the sound of someone lingering near her porch long after dark. The most chilling entries spoke of anonymous notes slipped under her door. They were short and cryptic, phrases like "stay silent and you don't know what you're getting into." Clara never told her friends or family about them, perhaps believing it was nothing more than paranoia, but the diary revealed that her fear had been building for months. She described feeling watched, even in crowded places, and admitted that sometimes she avoided leaving her house at all. This discovery raised urgent questions. If Clara had been stalked, then her death might not have been the result of a lover's quarrel at all. The image of Daniel as a jealous fiancé suddenly seemed less certain. Detectives realized they had been too focused on the obvious suspect, ignoring evidence that pointed to something far more disturbing. The diary was not just a collection of personal fears, it was a trail of warnings leading to her final days. Whoever had been haunting Clara's life might very well have been the same person who ended it. Digging deeper into Clara's diary, investigators followed a trail that led far beyond her relationship with Daniel. Among her entries, Clara mentioned working late nights at the law office where she was employed as an assistant. She wrote about sorting through files for a land development case and hinted at discovering something that wasn't right. Curious, detectives pulled records from the office and uncovered documents Clara had recently handled. Hidden in the paperwork were details about illegal land deals, bribes, and forged signatures. The name that surfaced again and again was Edward Hale, a wealthy businessman who had long been admired in Millstone for his generosity and influence. Hale was known for funding local projects, sponsoring community events, and portraying himself as a pillar of the town. But the files suggested another side, one that tied him to fraud and corruption. Clara's diary confirmed she had noticed these irregularities and had been debating whether to report them. She described feeling threatened, receiving veiled warnings from someone she believed was connected to Hale. Her notes about shadows and footsteps now seemed less like paranoia and more like evidence of surveillance meant to silence her. Detectives began to see the pattern. Clara had stumbled onto information that put her in danger, and the timing of her death aligned with when she wrote about preparing to speak out. When surveillance footage was reviewed from a street near Clara's home on the night of the murder, investigators spotted a tall man in a dark coat walking briskly away. His build and stride closely matched Hale's. For the first time, suspicion shifted away from Daniel and toward someone far more powerful. The case was no longer just about a young woman's death, it was about exposing a man who had carefully built his reputation on lies. Months of painstaking work finally brought the truth into focus. Forensic experts re-examined the wine glass that had once seemed like irrefutable proof against Daniel. They determined that the fingerprints and DNA left on it were several days old, meaning Daniel had used it during an earlier visit and not on the night of Clara's death. This revelation unraveled the prosecution's case, leaving a gaping hole in the theory that he had killed her in a moment of rage. The more investigators dug, the more Daniel appeared to be a man wrongly accused, trapped by circumstance and coincidence. The real breakthrough came when Clara's office was searched again, this time with a sharper eye. Inside a locked drawer, detectives discovered a small recording device. On it were Clara's last entries, spoken rather than written. Her voice trembled as she described Edward Hale's growing pressure to keep silent about the fraudulent land deals she had uncovered. She mentioned receiving direct threats and even described seeing Hale's car parked outside her home at night. The recordings were damning, leaving little doubt that Hale had the motive and the means to silence her permanently. When confronted with this evidence, Hale tried to flee the state, but he was intercepted and arrested. His carefully built image collapsed overnight as the truth of his crime spread. The community that once celebrated him as a generous benefactor now saw him for what he truly was, a man who used power and fear to protect his empire. Clara's death was not the result of jealousy or chance, but a deliberate act to bury a secret too dangerous to expose. Justice finally came, but Millstone was forever changed. The town's trust was broken, and its people learned that danger can wear the mask of respectability, hiding in plain sight until it is too late.